Lieutenant Thea Winters cursed as her ship's warning systems blared to life. The reconnaissance mission to the outer rim had gone smoothly until her vessel hit an unexpected gravitational anomaly. Now, as system after system failed, she found herself being pulled into the atmosphere of an uncharted ice planet. "Computer, status report," she commanded, her fingers flying over the controls. The reply came through bursts of static. "Critical engine failure. Navigation systems offline. Life support failing." The ship groaned under the strain of entry, metal twisting as the cold atmosphere tore at its hull. Thea gritted her teeth, fighting to maintain control of the descent. Years of flight training kicked in as she tried to angle the ship for the least devastating impact. The ground rushed up to meet her, an endless expanse of white and gray, broken only by jutting spires of black rock. The impact came like a thunderclap. Despite her harness, Thea's head slammed forward, then back. Pain exploded behind her eyes as darkness crept at the edges of her vision. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was the ghostly dance of snow through the cracked view screen. She awoke to bitter cold and the taste of blood in her mouth. The cockpit was dark, emergency power barely maintaining minimal life support. Outside, a storm raged, howling winds carrying particles of ice that hammered against the ship's hull like tiny bullets. "Computer, run diagnostic," she croaked, wincing at the pain in her ribs. No response. The impact had knocked out what remained of the ship's systems. She was alone. Thea forced herself to think clearly through the fog of pain and fear. She had survived the crash, but that would mean nothing if she froze to death in the wreckage. The emergency supplies were her only hope, if they had survived the impact. She unbuckled her harness with trembling fingers and made her way to the storage compartment. The cold was already seeping into her bones, making every movement an effort. The thermal suit she found wasn't designed for extended exposure to such extreme temperatures, but it would have to do. As she suited up, Thea's training echoed in her mind. Establish shelter. Conserve energy. Signal for rescue. But even as she went through the mental checklist, she knew her situation was dire. This planet wasn't on any standard charts. No one would know where to look for her. A sudden sound from outside made her freeze. Something was moving in the storm, something large. The shadow that passed across the view screen wasn't cast by any natural formation. Thea's hand moved to her sidearm as she pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding. The hull creaked as something struck it. Once, twice. Then silence. Thea held her breath, straining to hear over the howling wind. The next impact came from above, followed by the screech of metal being torn apart. Thea raised her weapon as a section of the ceiling gave way. Snow and wind rushed in, along with a massive figure that dropped into the cockpit with impossible grace. In the dim emergency lighting, Thea caught glimpses of iridescent scales and gleaming armor. The figure straightened to its full height, at least 8 feet tall, and turned to face her. Its face was distinctly reptilian, with patterns of bioluminescent markings that pulsed softly in the darkness. But it was the eyes that held Thea transfixed, deep violet orbs that seemed to pierce straight through her. "Lower your weapon, human." The creature spoke, its voice a low rumble that somehow carried over the storm. "If I meant you harm, you would already be dead." Thea's finger tightened on the trigger. "Who are you? What is this place?" "I am Rylax, guardian of the southern reaches." The creature's head tilted slightly. "And you have crashed on Nivalis, a world that does not welcome the unprepared. Your ship is beyond repair, and the storm is growing stronger. If you wish to survive the night, you will need my help." Thea's mind raced. Everything in her training screamed not to trust an unknown alien entity. But as another blast of Arctic wind cut through the cockpit, she knew she had no choice. This was a world of ice and death, and she was already feeling its cruel embrace. "Why help me?" she managed through chattering teeth. Rylax's markings pulsed brighter for a moment. "Because despite what you may think, not all of us see humans as enemies. and because no one deserves to die alone in the cold. He extended a scaled hand. Choose quickly, Lieutenant. The storm will not wait for your decision. With one last look at her ruined ship, Thea holstered her weapon and took Rylax's hand. As she did, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into something far bigger than a simple rescue. On this frozen world, alliances would be forged in ice and tested by fire. The journey through the storm was unlike anything Thea had experienced. Rylax moved with surprising agility through the whiteout conditions, his bioluminescent markings providing a faint beacon she could follow. The wind shrieked around them, carrying ice crystals that felt like needles against any exposed skin. "The shelter is not far," Rylax called back, his voice barely audible over the storm. "Stay close to my path. The ice here is treacherous." Thea followed in his footsteps, her legs burning with effort. The thermal suit's power cells were already straining against the extreme cold. She couldn't feel her fingers anymore, and her thoughts were becoming sluggish, early signs of hypothermia. A deep rumbling sound cut through the howling wind. Rylax stopped abruptly, his head tilted in a way that reminded Thea of a predator scenting prey. "Down," he commanded, pulling her behind an ice formation. Through the swirling snow, massive shapes moved past their position. Thea caught glimpses of armored vehicles designed for the harsh terrain, their tracks leaving deep gouges in the ice. "Raiders," Rylax growled, his markings dimming to near invisibility. "They hunt for crashed ships, strip them for parts, and they take prisoners." "For what purpose?" Thea whispered, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "The ice mines. Forced labor. Few survive more than a month." His violet eyes fixed on her. "This is why I intervened. Your distress signal would have drawn them like scavengers to a carcass." The convoy passed, but Thea's unease remained. "You're not just a guardian, are you? You're fighting them." Rylax's expression was unreadable, but his markings pulsed with a deeper intensity. "My people once ruled this world, before the raiders came with their machines and their greed. Now we protect what remains and those who would be their victims." They resumed their journey, moving more cautiously now. Thea's military training kicked in as she studied their surroundings, noting defensive positions and potential ambush points. Despite the cold numbing her body, her mind was sharp with purpose. After what felt like hours, they reached what appeared to be a sheer wall of ice. Rylax pressed his hand against it, and a hidden door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the temperature was notably warmer, though still cold by human standards. The chamber they entered was a blend of ancient architecture and advanced technology. Crystalline formations served as both decoration and light sources, while holographic displays showed surveillance of the surrounding territory. "Welcome to Haven," Rylax said, helping her remove the frozen thermal suit. "One of the last strongholds of my people, the Nivians." Thea took in the sight of other Nivians moving through the chamber, their scales showing variations of color and pattern she hadn't noticed in Rylax. Some wore armor similar to his, while others were dressed in robes adorned with intricate designs. "Your crash was not an accident," a new voice announced. An elderly Nivian approached, her scales a pale silver, markings pulsing with a gentle rhythm. "I am Zara, seer of the Southern Reach. We have been expecting you, Lieutenant Winters." Thea's hand instinctively moved toward her weapon. "How do you know my name? What do you mean, expecting me?" Zara's expression softened. "The raiders did not simply stumble upon our world. They were led here by someone who seeks something far more valuable than ice or labor, something hidden beneath the ancient ice, and now both sides search for the key to finding it." "What does this have to do with me?" Thea demanded, though a sinking feeling told her she already knew the answer. "Your ship's trajectory was deliberately altered," Rylax explained, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Someone wanted you to crash here. The question is, who? And why you specifically?" Before Thea could respond, alarms blared throughout the complex. The holographic displays flickered with new information. multiple signatures approaching from different directions. "They're coming," Zara announced grimly. "They tracked you here. The raiders know we have you, and they won't stop until they get what they want." Rylax moved to a weapons rack, selecting an energy spear that hummed to life in his grasp. "Then they will learn why the Nivians have survived this long. Lieutenant, are you ready to fight?" Thea checked her sidearm, adrenaline pushing away the last effects of the cold. She hadn't asked for this conflict, but she was a soldier, trained to adapt and overcome, and something told her that her survival, and perhaps much more, depended on standing with these people. "Ready," she confirmed, moving to a defensive position. "But when this is over, I want answers. All of them." The first explosions rocked the outer walls of Haven, and Thea knew she had just committed herself to a war she barely understood, on a frozen world that held secrets worth killing for. But as she stood beside Rylax, watching his people prepare for battle, she felt something she hadn't since the crash. Hope. The raiders struck from multiple directions, their explosive charges shaking Haven's foundations. Thea fought alongside the Nivians, her military training complementing their ancient combat techniques. Rylax moved like lightning, his energy spear cutting through armored attackers, while his bioluminescent markings pulsed with battle rhythm. "They're not just trying to get in," Thea shouted over the chaos, noting the raiders' attack pattern. "This is a coordinated strike. They're hurting us somewhere." Zara's voice echoed through their comm systems. "The lower chambers. They're trying to force us into the ancient halls." A massive explosion rocked the western wall, and raiders poured through the breach. Thea caught glimpses of advanced tech beneath their ice-scarred armor. Definitely not common scavengers. These were military-grade operations. "Fall back to the sacred chamber," Rylax ordered, covering their retreat. "We cannot let them reach the archives." As they descended deeper into Haven, the architecture changed. Modern tech gave way to crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Ancient symbols carved into the walls began to glow as they passed, responding to some unseen energy. "Lieutenant Winters," a voice crackled through her comm, one she recognized from her military days. "Commander Pierce sends his regards." Thea's blood ran cold. "Pierce? He's behind this. Did you really think your crash was an accident?" The voice was smug. "We've been watching you, Lieutenant. Your genetic profile matches exactly what we need. The Nivians aren't the only ones who can read the ancient signs." A barrage of plasma fire forced them into a circular chamber. The walls were covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move in the dim light. At the center stood a crystalline pedestal, pulsing with a deep blue glow. "The heart chamber," Zara breathed, her silver scales reflecting the ancient light. "This is what they want." Rylax positioned himself between the entrance and the pedestal. "The prophecy speaks of one whose blood can awaken the ancient defenses, a warrior from beyond the stars." Prophecy. Thea's mind raced. "This is about more than mining or resources, isn't it?" "Nidalis holds power beyond imagination," Zara explained quickly. "The Raiders' masters seek to harness it, to control the very forces that shaped this world. But only one with the ancient bloodline can access its core." The chamber shook as more explosions drew closer. Through the dust and chaos, Thea saw heavily armored figures entering the chamber, led by a man whose face she had hoped never to see again. "Commander Pierce," she spat, raising her weapon. Pierce smiled, cold and calculating. "The lost colony of Earth's first deep space mission, the one that vanished without a trace. Did you never wonder why you were chosen for this mission, Lieutenant? Why your blood type was so special?" Realization hit her like a physical blow. The colony ship. They didn't die. They landed here and interbred with the Nivians, Zara confirmed, creating a bloodline that could bridge both worlds. "Your ancestors helped us protect the ancient power, and now you must make a choice." Pierce's forces surrounded them, weapons trained on the small group. "The choice is simple, Lieutenant. Help us access the core, or watch your new friends die." The power hidden in this ice world could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Don't be on the wrong side of history. Thea looked at Rylax, saw the trust in his violet eyes, then to Zara, whose ancient wisdom had guided them this far. The chamber's crystals pulsed faster, responding to her presence, to the blood of both human and Nivian ancestors flowing through her veins. She made her decision. "You're right about one thing, Pierce," she said, stepping toward the pedestal. "I am going to access the core." The crystals flared to blinding brightness as her hand touched the ancient surface. Power surged through her body, connecting her to something vast and ancient. In that moment, she understood what her ancestors had discovered. This wasn't just about power. It was about destiny. Energy coursed through Thea's body as the ancient system recognized her hybrid DNA. The chamber's crystalline walls pulsed with increasing intensity, casting shadows that danced like living things across the ice. "Stop her," Pierce commanded, but it was too late. The power surge knocked his forces back, creating a barrier of pure energy around Thea and the pedestal. Through the connection, knowledge flooded her mind. Nivalis wasn't just a planet. It was a weapon, created by an ancient civilization to contain something far more dangerous than Pierce could imagine. The ice wasn't natural. It was a prison, keeping an ancient force locked away. The colony ship didn't crash here by accident. Thea spoke, her voice resonating with newfound power. They were drawn here, chosen to become guardians alongside the Nivians. Rylax fought through the raiders, his energy spear cutting deadly arcs through the air. The merge of our bloodlines wasn't chance. It was necessary. Only together could we maintain the prison. Pierce laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. "A prison. All this power, and you use it as a containment facility." He raised his weapon, aiming at Thea's head. "Release the core controls, Lieutenant." "That's an order." "You don't understand," Zora called out, her silver scales glowing with urgent warning. "The force below the ice. It destroys worlds, consumes civilizations. Your masters aren't seeking a weapon. They're about to release an apocalypse." The chamber shuddered as something deep below stirred. Thea could feel it through her connection to the ancient systems, a vast, malevolent consciousness testing its bonds. The raiders' explosions had weakened the containment field, and now it sensed freedom. "Thea," Rylax called out, fighting his way to her side. "The systems are failing. Without the full network active, we can't hold it much longer." She nodded, understanding what needed to be done. Through her connection, she could see the network of containment nodes spread across the planet's surface. Most were dormant, weakened by centuries of neglect. They needed to be reactivated, and quickly. "I have to reach the other nodes," she said. "Each one needs a direct connection to restore the network." Pierce's forces pressed forward, but the chamber's defenses held them back. "You'll doom humanity to remain a minor power," Pierce snarled. "Think of what we could do with this force under our control." "Control?" Thea laughed bitterly. "Look around you, Pierce. Look at what this thing does to even its prison. You want to unleash it on populated worlds." A massive tremor shook the chamber. Ice cracked, and ancient warnings flashed across the crystalline displays. The force below was awakening, pushing against its weakened bonds with increasing strength. "Rylax," Thea called out, "I need you to get me to the surface nodes. All of them." The Nivian warrior nodded, understanding the risks. "The raiders will follow. And the storm outside has grown worse. We don't have a choice." Thea released her connection to the pedestal, the power leaving her body in a rush that nearly brought her to her knees. "This isn't about humans or Nivians anymore. If that thing breaks free, everyone dies." Zara pressed a crystalline key into Thea's hand. "The map to the nodes is encoded in this. But be warned, each activation will draw power from you. Few have survived connecting to more than one node." "Then I'll be the first," Thea said, checking her weapon. "Because I'm not just human, and I'm not just Nivian. I'm both, and that's exactly what this world has been waiting for." They burst from the chamber, Rylax leading the way while Nevian warriors covered their retreat. Behind them, Pierce screamed orders to his forces. The race to save or doom the galaxy had begun, and they were already running out of time. The storm outside Haven had intensified beyond anything Thea had seen before. The ancient forces stirring affected the planet itself, turning the already hostile environment into something apocalyptic. Through howling winds and sheets of razor-sharp ice, Thea and Rylax fought their way toward the first surface node. Each step drained her strength. The previous connection had taken more from her than she'd admitted, but there was no time for weakness. Pierce's forces pursued them relentlessly, their vehicles specially equipped for the extreme conditions. There, Rylax shouted over the wind. A spire of black rock jutted from the ice, ancient symbols pulsing weakly along its surface. Thea pressed the crystalline key into a matching slot. The node hummed to life, and once again power surged through her body. This time, she screamed. It felt like her blood was turning to fire, her very cells rebelling against the ancient energy. Through the pain, she saw visions. The original builders of this prison, a civilization so advanced they had learned to harness the power of consciousness itself. The force they imprisoned was their own creation, an attempt to transcend physical form that had gone horrifically wrong. 3 more nodes, she gasped as the connection subsided. We have to hurry. Rylax caught her as she stumbled. You're not going to survive 3 more connections. I don't have to survive, she said, pushing herself up. I just have to finish. A plasma blast cut through the air between them. Pierce's forces had caught up, their weapons modified with the same technology that powered their ships. Stand down, Lieutenant. Pierce's voice boomed over the storm. Final warning. The ice beneath their feet trembled. The ancient force was getting stronger, its prison weakening by the minute. If it broke free, it wouldn't just destroy Nivalis. It would spread across the galaxy, consuming all consciousness in its path. They ran for the second node, Rylax's energy spear deflecting plasma bolts while Thea pushed through the pain. Her connection to the ancient systems had changed her, allowing her to sense the power flowing through the planet. But that same connection was killing her. The second node nearly stopped her heart. The third left her blind for precious seconds, blood trickling from her nose and ears. But she saw more with each connection, understanding the true purpose of her bloodline, why the merger of human and Nivian DNA had been so important. They weren't just guardians. They were keys, designed to maintain the prison, but also to destroy it if necessary. And now she knew how. The final node is different, she told Rylax as they approached it. It's not just about containment. It's a failsafe. Understanding dawned in his violet eyes. You mean to destroy it all? The prison, the force, everything. It's the only way. She smiled weakly. My ancestors knew this day would come. They encoded the sequence in our DNA. Pierce's forces surrounded them, weapons trained on the pair. Pierce himself stepped forward, his expression triumphant. I should thank you, Lieutenant. You've activated exactly what we needed. Now step aside. Thea placed her hand on the final node. You wanted power, Pierce. Watch closely. The surge this time was different. Instead of fighting it, she embraced the energy, letting it flow through her completely. Her DNA responded, unlocking sequences hidden for generations. The node didn't just activate, it transformed. Energy erupted from all 4 nodes, connecting in a blinding web above the planet's surface. The ancient force howled in rage as its prison began to collapse, but not in the way it expected. The containment field wasn't failing. It was imploding, drawing the force into a collapsing dimension that would seal it away forever. Pierce screamed orders, but it was too late. The implosion pulled at everything touched by the ancient power, including those who had tried to harness it. His forces vanished one by one, drawn into the dimensional collapse their own actions had triggered. Rylax. Thea gasped, holding onto the node as reality warped around them. Get everyone clear. I have to. Complete the sequence. I'm not leaving you. he said, gripping her arm. Your ancestors may have been the keys, but mine were the guardians. We finished this together. The storm above them became a vortex of energy and ice, drawing the ancient force up from its prison. Thea felt its consciousness brush against hers, ancient, alien, and utterly malevolent. But she also felt something else, the combined strength of generations of humans and Nivians who had prepared for this moment. With the last of her strength, she initiated the final sequence. The failsafe activated, and the dimensional collapse reached its peak. In a flash of light that outshone Nivelus's sun, the ancient force vanished, taking its prison with it. The silence that followed was deafening. The storm died instantly, leaving only gently falling snow. Where the nodes had stood, crystalline monuments remained, no longer prisons, but memorials to those who had sacrificed everything to protect the galaxy. Thea collapsed, but Rylax caught her. She was changed. They both were. The power had left its mark, altering their DNA even further. But they had succeeded. The ancient force was gone, and with it, the need for guardians. What now? She asked, looking up at the clearing sky. Rylax helped her stand, his markings pulsing with a new pattern that matched the crystalline structures around them. Now we rebuild. Not as separate peoples, but as what we were meant to become, together. The snow continued to fall on Nivelus, no longer a prison planet, but a world of new beginnings. And in the growing light of dawn, two figures walked side by side, their footprints marking the first steps of a new chapter in both human and Nivian history.